Welcome back to Network Africa. Nigeria posted the total trade value of 4.21 trillion naira in the third quarter ended September. That's better than the second quarter by 16.3%. Data released on Thursday by the Statistics Office shows exports grew 29.1% while imports grew 6.2%. Nigeria's trade with the rest of the world was heavily tilted in favor of Asia, accounting for 34.9% in terms of imports, while America comes second with 12.2%, while trade imports with other African countries was a mere 3.6% in the period under review. Joining us now is Channel's TV business editor, Bosun Omofaye, to talk more about these figures. Thank you so much, Bosun, for coming on Network Africa. For a country in recession, these are good numbers, I hope.
Well, essentially because the crude oil production went up significantly. That contributed significantly to the exports that we had in the third quarter under review. Again, with all the activities of the Nigerian government using military force and using persuasion and what have you, with the Niger Delta militants, you find that Nigeria has been able to increase its crude oil production. So to that extent, yes, we had a higher trade balance in the third quarter. That may continue in the fourth quarter since we've seen a bit of reduction in militants' activities within the Niger Delta region. And you find one or two of those facilities that were vandalized being repaired and put back on stream. So that sort of moved things up for us in terms of trade balance. We added very significant figure of 600 billion in third quarter. That's quite big.
Oh, it's good that, you know, our trade balance with the rest of the world, you know, it's coming up. But for the African continent, I know that most African leaders have said that we should look within and trade amongst ourselves to, you know, ensure that Africa does no longer has to, you know, reach out to the so-called world powers to beg for aid. So how good are the numbers in Nigeria and the rest of Africa?
Not significantly good. As of 2013, by figures published by The Economist magazine, we're doing about 12% Africa to Africa. Europe to Europe, 60%. North America, 40%. So we're significantly at the lower end of the strong, as it were. I'm sure if you do 12% thereabout in 2013, I'm not sure by 2016 we'll be doing significantly higher. I'm sure we'll still be below the 20 threshold. If you look at vis-a-vis 60% for Europe, that means that we're not doing significant. We're not doing well at all. One of the reasons that were responsible for that was because many African countries are landlocked. A number of European countries have access to the sea, whether it is France, Italy, Spain, Britain, now out of with Brexit and what have you. So access to the sea is a major issue. The big African countries that have access to the sea, because the trading by sea is very important. You can't move heavy machinery and a lot of things by aeroplane. Okay, so you need to move them by sea. Some of those images you see, big 20-footer, 40-footer containers, dozens and dozens, hundreds of them on sea freighters. So you need to do massively by ocean. So Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Benin Republic, South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, and the rest that have access to the sea are importing a lot. But the problem is that as soon as these goods come in from Europe, from Asia, they get transported inland to other parts of Africa. So in terms of local productivity, it's relatively small. So you find crude oil coming to Nigeria, but getting re-exported, part of it stolen to Benin Republic, up north to Niger, Chad, Cameroon, and what have you. You bring in goods into South Africa, it finds its way to Zambia, to Tanzania, Botswana, and other African countries. You bring goods in from Kenya, it also gets moved inward. So because the number of African countries, Mozambique, the rest of them, Rwanda, have no access to sea, and air transport is also at its infancy in Africa, largely speaking. So the movement of goods is still a little bit not significant. Again, if you look at the size of what we move, that is small. The volume is also small, but a lot of trade are going under the counter that are not captured by this intra-Africa trade. So some of the goods that, for example, the volume of goods that come into Nigeria that get retransported or re-exported into other African countries within West Africa or Central Africa are not captured by this data.
All right, thank you so much for your insight into that. Channels TV business editor.
My pleasure.
Bosun Omofaye.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to other stories now. A prominent Ethiopian opposition leader, Merera Gudina, has been arrested upon his arrival from Brussels. Mr. Merera was in Brussels, where he testified at the European Parliament on the current political crisis and human rights violations in his country. He had called for Ethiopia's parliament to be dissolved and for the establishment of a transitional government. The government had campaigned for his arrest, saying he had violated the current state of emergency by attending and testifying at the hearing at the European Parliament. Ethiopia declared a 6-month state of emergency last month in the face of an unprecedented wave of protests by members of the Oromo and Amhara ethnic groups. Well, that's looking at some other stories. We take you to Kenya now. 2 Iranians have been arrested in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. This is the second pair of Iranians to be arrested in the country on suspicion of planning an act of terror. In June 2012, the Kenyan authorities arrested Ahmad Mohammed and Syed Musavi for possessing explosives, which they allegedly planned to use for an attack. They were jailed for life in May 2013, but their sentence was commuted to 15 years after they appealed in February. In November last year, 2 Kenyans were arrested as well and accused of planning terrorism and spying on behalf of the Iranian state intelligence. Well, that's Network Africa. Thank you so much for watching the program. I'm Joka Rogers. Bye for now.
That shape